Hello, welcome back to another surprise episode of the Babylon Podcast. I'm Summer Brooks,
I am Tim Callender.
and we have very special guests here today. Yes, guests. We are diving back into the world of Babylon 5, The Road Home, and we're here with the composers of the new music. We have Kristopher Carter, Lolita Ritmanis, and Michael McCuistion. And I I am happy with the new music because it maintains that orchestral feel, but I have a nit to pick about the delivery options, and we will get into that later. Welcome to the show.
I don't
Thank
think
you.
they have any control over that, Summer.
They know who to talk to.
Thanks for.
Nice to be here, and if we can answer any questions, I don't know if we can answer anything about this magical delivery option thing, but
It's a streaming world we live in, Summer. You just got to get used to it.
Get off my lawn.
So I would like to start because I'm looking at your various offices and workspaces, and I am seeing a number of Emmy awards. Could you tell us what you've won Emmys for?
go for it, Chris. Why don't you?
Oh,
tell
okay.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate to win an Emmy Award for the animated series Batman Beyond. And in addition to that, we also have been nominated a few times for Batman the Brave and the Bold, Teen Titans. Help me out, guys.
Teen Titans Go?
Superman the animated series.
Superman the Animated Series. Michael was nominated for an Emmy for Best Theme for Justice League Unlimited. Lolita was also nominated for an Emmy for her theme to Justice League.
Very nice. So how did the three of you come together as a team?
We've been together for a long time, and it all started as because we were fortunate to be mentored by the late, great Shirley Walker, who did the music for Batman the Animated Series and was a very prestigious, very well-known composer, orchestrator, somebody who arranges the music for translates the music from a simple sketch to the full orchestra. She worked on a lot of big features for people like Hans Zimmer and Danny Elfman. And anyway, as her career took off, as a composer, she decided to open the doors to also mentor up and coming composers. And we were the ones in the batch that kind of survived the mentorship and went on to work for her for many years and then be out on our own for many years. So since then, so that's how we met.
I noticed, and Summer may not have because she is stuck in the past. Looking through my one of my preferred streaming services, I listened to the soundtrack standalone from the series or the movie rather, and I noticed that on individual tracks, each one has one of your names on it. It's not Carter Ritmanis McCuistion, it's Kristopher Carter, and then this one is Lolita Ritmanis and so forth. Is that indicative of which portion of music that you each worked on, or is that just an ease of information in the streaming realm?
Well, we worked together for many, many years, and we work together in many different ways. Sometimes we'll all write something together, and usually that's maybe a main title or something like that, a main theme. But oftentimes when we work on a movie or a series, we'll divide each score up by individual cues or pieces of music that are, underscore for the project. And we will each work on our own cues. And so we each had musical cues that we wrote for this project. And then when you put all of our cues together, it makes the score for the entire show. We share material between us. So if there's a theme for a character or something, then we'll share that with each other and we'll incorporate that into what we're writing individually. But that enables us to all three write music at the same time, and we can work 3 times as fast. And because we've worked together for so long, we kind of finish each other's musical sentences, as it were. And so we all are very much in the same realm of style and orchestra and like whatever we're using and idiom. And so it's just kind of a three-headed brain kind of a thing.
How did you determine who was working on what part with The Road Home?
We always have a very democratic way. We want to make sure that if somebody is really feeling a scene, that they get to do it. And then there's some scenes that are going to be a lot of challenge and a lot of work, and we all kind of say, okay, well, I guess it's my turn to take that one. So it's very much about making sure that the person with the inspiration can really put that inspiration to good use on the scene. And that the workload is shared in all the different ways. And I think what's kind of interesting about the way that, as Mike is saying, that we kind of finish each other's sentences is that we all really can truly do any style of music. We don't just have one person that specializes in one kind of music or one style or one kind of scene. We're all able to tell the story. And that's really what we do, is we're telling the story, supporting the story, pointing out parts of the story that you wouldn't necessarily know from just watching it with the music. And we all share that responsibility in that workload.
Sorry, Summer, go ahead.
How familiar were you with Babylon 5 and the music that Kristopher Franke had composed over the series? And what path did you take to say, we want to give the fans something that feels like Babylon 5, but that also feels new?
Michael, you should take this one since you
I'll
tackled.
take this one because I think, first of all, we were thrilled to get the call because this property has been around for a long time. It's a very well-established property. Everybody knows what Babylon 5 is. And so we're just like, wow, this is great. We'd love to be a part of this long-standing science fiction property, which is not Star Trek or Star Wars. I don't think any of us were really truly that familiar intimately with the show, but we dug in. I mean, we started at the beginning. I was watching a bunch of episodes. I engrossed myself in the original series, the live action series. We wanted to know what the history was behind the show and like where it came from and where it was going to go. And then we had extensive conversations with the producer about what he wanted out of the music and what he wanted out of the score. Did he want something brand new? Did he want something that felt like it belonged in that world? And I think he wanted both. He wanted something that came from the original score in terms of its flavor. And then he wanted us to take it and move it forward into a new place for this animated feature, which had never been done before with this property. And so that was our charge, was to, let's keep it in the ballpark, but let's do something different with it, to make it feel fresh. And so that was kind of our mission with the score.
I mean, it really is at the end of the day. It's at the end and the beginning of the day. Our job really is to support the story, to support the vision of the creator of the show and the visionaries behind this particular incarnation of this. And it's if we can kind of get into their brain space and just help be sort of like be the heartbeat also of the actual project. The viewer really isn't meant to notice the music as much, like think, oh, I like that music, but just to feel things more and to have something that's already existing on screen to amplify that or sometimes draw extra attention to it and subliminally affect the audience more. I think that's really, if people say, oh, we didn't even notice the music, but boy, we love the music, it's like, okay, in some way that's a good thing. Then they'll listen to the soundtrack afterwards and be able to kind of relive the actual story.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that I noticed, listening to the soundtrack as a standalone, and also with the again, going back and watching the movie, It's interesting that the music, I think, works on both levels. It very much is supporting what's happening on screen. As you say, Lolita, it either amplifies or has something to sort of a counterpoint to what's happening, underpins it. And yet, as standalone music, I felt like each track had a beginning, told a story, came to an end. It never felt just simply incidental. And I find sometimes with soundtrack music, that's kind of what happens. Is it's just sort of like, okay, we got just like this trumpet line going gag 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 through a thing, just taking up time. And it never feels that way with what you folks have composed. Is that something that you're mindful of as you're composing this music?
For sure, absolutely. I mean, we're music composers, and we want to write music that you can take away from the picture, and enjoy it as an experience. And whether or not you know the picture that was written for, to visualize in your mind. We want to write music that you can close your eyes and see a story. And I think the best film music is music that you can take away from the picture, enjoy on it for its own merits, and yet when you put it in that right place in the movie, and it just unfolds in the same way as the scene. I mean, there's a lot of craft that goes into creating music that feels like music on its own, and yet still is unfolding in the way that it has to tell the story.
Yeah, when I'm listening to a soundtrack, and I'm an old school collector of soundtracks, it sometimes surprises me in a good way when I realize that the music in a particularly moving scene, whether it be fear, terror, shock, adventure, joy, sadness, the music helps fuel the emotion but doesn't distract from what you're watching on the screen. And then later, when you listen to the soundtrack by itself, you feel that different level that was in the music that made the music change the scene, so to speak. And I enjoyed discovering new little things when listening to the soundtrack separately from the movie. So, how much of the movie did you guys see before you even started composing?
Well, we had, I think we did we get some storyboards first? Or no, we just got.
Did we get the script? I think we got a script.
We got the script.
We sign all the non-disclosure agreements and all the things that we need to. It's an interesting process, because there's something really special that can happen if the composer has not seen anything until a rough cut, because then we are absolutely the fresh eyes and ears of a particular project. And we can sometimes, where we, in watching this for the first time, are crying or are laughing or are not crying when we should be crying, it can help impact what we do, because we realize, this is someplace where we can help, or this is really great. You don't need music here. We really need to stay out of music here, because this dialogue, this performance is already so powerful. So on that level, in this case, we did have an inkling of what was going on, but we usually come in. Usually, this is not so much the norm. I'd say nowadays there are many more composition situations where a composer comes in even before something is filmed, or at the early script stage. But in this case, we really watched it when had some sort of first cut of the film.
Well, yes and no. We didn't see the entire film all at once. We just saw the first 20 minutes, and then we began our work, and then we got another 20 minutes somewhere in the middle of that, and then we saw that, and then when we were in the middle of that second batch, we got the last 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. So we didn't really see the whole thing from start to finish. We knew where it was going to go, but that's the other thing about working with film composers is that, we can be the audience. We don't need to see the entire picture all at once. It's almost in some ways better for it to unfold as we're writing the music, because then we can have discussions with the producer about, well, what do we want the audience to know? Because at this point, this is all we know. We can see that there might be a foreshadowing here. Do we need to do something to accentuate that, or do we want to keep that a surprise? So, the not knowing is sometimes a good thing, because we're in real time helping them understand how the story is unfolding based on how they've cut the picture together.
Music puzzles. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So we've all seen the very famous photos of John Williams in front of the London Symphony Orchestra conducting to this big screen of a Star Wars movie, right? And the implication is that somehow he is conducting passages to the rhythms of the music, or rhythm of the film that's unfolding before him. What's it like what's your process? Is your process anything like that, or is that just a thing that, when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar Hollywood movies, you've got that luxury?
No, I mean,
the
that's
luxury
the process. Right?
The luxury is the London Symphony, but the process is actually very similar, because we all are conductors. We work with an orchestra. When we conduct with the orchestra, we do on the scoring stage, we do have the movie up on the screen, but that timing the music to picture actually goes back to the way we compose it. When we compose the music, we are actually watching the scene, and for me personally, as I watch the scene, there's usually some kind of rhythm that you can pick up on. If it's the rhythm of the dialogue, the rhythm of the editing, there's always some kind of speed that the picture is implying. And so as we watch the scene, we're actually creating music that has that follows it and kind of locks into that same rhythm.
Okay, so you've got a scene. Let's talk about the scene where Sheridan is in Tuzanor, and he's telling them to start up the tachyon power device, and then he's got, all the stuff that starts happening. That scene is, say 3 minutes long. Do you, at this point in your career, do you have a sense of how much music fills up 3 minutes?
We really go moment to moment. It's not, yes, a particular arc of one. Well, like if you look at a track on the soundtrack, you say, oh, this one's 3 minutes or this one's 5 minutes. But it's really about where, sometimes music will kind of sneak in, so you don't even notice when it comes in. Sometimes something big will happen. There's a big explosion of some sort, and bam, you see the bad guy or something, and then the music starts with a big musical moment. But we are literally, it's almost like a ballet of some sort. We are weaving in and out, and not literally out, but weaving in and out of, in between dialogue lines, in building up to, the big grand kiss in certain situations, or, the famous, John Williams, you see that you see the shark, or do you see the shark, or do you just feel the shark because you hear those two notes that scare the daylights out of you? That's what we are going moment by moment. So whether it's 3 minutes, there certainly are situations where it's more like a needle drop situation for certain scores. That's not the case for what we do. For the vast majority, 99.9% of what we do, we don't just like, oh, let's pick this piece of music and see if it'll work here. It's we are literally scoring. We could write a score to this dialogue here too. What we're talking about, we could make it more dramatic or less.
Yeah, I think everything we've done together as a group, I think everything we've done, we have scored to picture. All the series that we've worked on, all the long forms that we've worked on, everything we've done has been a custom score to every scene in every picture that we've done. I don't think we've ever done any kind of a needle drop library music editing thing. That's not normally how we work. We can work that way, but we just haven't. We've always enjoyed writing music that fit every moment of the score.
And the
Tim, I
audience,
think, sorry.
the audience will want to hear certain themes, like in this. Chris, you wrote the Delenn love theme, right? You wrote that was something you created, and that comes early, but then it repeats. You latch on to something. Hopefully the audience, this is the first time watching, but maybe they'll have some little idea of having heard something before, and something a theme will just kind of peek in for a moment, but then later fully develop as actually a relationship develops, or a certain scenario develops. So Chris, I'm sorry, you were gonna
No, that's okay. I was thinking, Tim, about your question about if there's the tachyon disturbance and 3 minutes of music. It really is almost purely math, and we don't think of it as a 3-minute slice of time. We think of it more as like signposts. At this point, they turn on the generator, and then at 15.26 seconds later, the things start going bad, and then it's literally, okay, well, to fit that amount of time, it has to be this exact beats per minute tempo, and we use computers. The computer, determines this so that it's mathematically accurate. But then it's just a matter of, that's 16 bars of music. So you have to then create these 16 bars of music that will end at that point that you've set as your signpost.
How much do you work with the producers, like going back and forth, and he's like, okay, this is 90% of what I'm feeling for this scene. Can you tweak this, or bring up this instrument or bring down this instrument? How does that work when there is a back and forth?
I think we always work with the producers that way as much as we possibly can. We always want to write what we write and give them our first impression, and then they help us, determine where the music is strong and where the music needs to be a little bit different based on how they want the audience to experience their story, their picture. And so, in the case of this particular production, we have a great relationship with this producer, and he's almost part of the three-headed brain. He's like the fourth head. And so we got a lot of things right for him, and it was just really little tweaks here and there that needed to happen based on certain things. And sometimes it's things we don't even see. There's something happening in the picture. There's some kind of a visual thing that he wanted to be different. It wasn't quite as big as he wanted it. So he wants the music to be bigger to make that moment seem bigger, even though in the picture it doesn't seem visually as big. The music can really help that. And other things, it's like, oh my God, there's this mistake, and so in the visuals, it's like, well, so we'll make sure music doesn't call attention to that, So these kinds of little things, were kind of what we were doing. We're just modulating little bits of the story here and there, and I will say that before we write a note of music, we try to have a really good meeting with the producer and talk about the story and what he's trying to communicate. And the better meeting we can have up front, then when we sit down to write, we know what story we're writing for. So we try to really have a thorough spotting meeting. The process is called spotting, where we talk about where the music goes and what the music is going to do. We try to have a very thorough meeting with the producer so that we're all on the same page before we even begin writing that custom score. And if we do that and do it well, usually the first pass is pretty darn close.
So do you generate demos first to, do, in essence, musical sketches? You write out your notation, you do quick demos in your home studio, get approval, and then go to orchestra, or what's that process look like?
Everything is reviewed for sure, and we do that in whatever format we have to, and it's generally creating it using synthesizers and samples, a synthetic orchestra, and it's actually pretty fleshed out. By the time the producer hears it, it's been produced just about as well as it can be with keyboards. Thankfully, there's no way to completely replace an orchestra with samples and computers yet. There's, live musicians are just still add something to a recording that you just can't replicate with computers, but you don't always have the budget or the financial flexibility to have the London Symphony. So it may be a combination of a smaller live group, or it might be a full orchestra, or it might be even just something that's done completely with synthesizers. But by the time the producers are hearing it, it's pretty well tweaked out.
How does the
Sorry,
work,
Summer, go ahead.
Sorry. It's like, how does the workflow differ from doing a standalone movie to doing a series like Batman Beyond? Is it faster? Do you have to, just streamline your time because you're working with episodes instead of, a 90-minute movie?
Well, that's a great question. Well, each series is different, and whether or not it's a continuation of watch last week's episode before you watch this week's episode, or whether it's just every episode is like its own little standalone movie of some sort. Of course, with a feature length project, the arc is a little bit longer in general. So it's really important to be able to connect from the beginning of the film until the end of the film, to connect it with some sort of threads that go through this. Like earlier we were talking about certain thematic material, and schedule wise, I mean, that again, it comes down to how meticulous, whatever everybody's workflow situation is. We have a pretty specific schedule of like how many minutes a day to write, and when delivery has to happen and all that, and that varies very much from series to series and film to film. It was interesting with this project that our main person that we worked with was the producer Rick Morales. Yet, of course, looming as the omnipresent in the sphere somewhere is J. Michael Straczynski. Somewhere out there, and we're thinking maybe he'll hear the music. Will he like the music or not like the music? So our first, I think everybody was on a little bit on pins and needles, like what will he think? And to our wonderful surprise, he really, really loved what we were doing. And he was actually early on saying, take what you're doing and even plus it, go even further, allow your creativity. Don't feel restrained by any preconceived ideas of what you need to do. Just allow yourself to try even push the envelope further. So getting a positive note like that from somebody like that is really freeing and makes the process even more fun. As you can imagine, in a lot of television and feature film work, you sometimes have decisions by committees. So it's not even just one person. You might have for little kids, not even just little kids shows, but for superhero shows, you might have the toy company weighing in on your music, and you'll have the producer, and you'll have the executive producer, you'll have the head of the studio, the head of what used to be a network, but now is whether it's a streaming service. So you might have one person saying I love apples, and the other person saying I hate apples, we don't want any apples. So then you have to figure out what you're going to do.
I'm flabbergasted by that, because unless the toy has a button that plays its own theme music, the toy company should not be involved in that at all. That's just ridiculous.
They are financing the project, so they feel like they should have a say. I mean, it's their pocketbook, and they want to be able to have some kind of a part of the process.
Well, there should be a button on Optimus Prime, that plays his theme music. So there.
I'm all for that.
So for the various motifs for characters, like for Delenn or John Sheridan or Zathras even, do you write those out first and then incorporate those into the final tracks, the final music that will be used in a scene? Or is it just something that starts developing as you're writing for a scene, and then you go, oh, hey, look, there's the Delenn love theme, and let me flesh that out and pass that along?
Well, I think sometimes it's obvious that a certain character or a certain relationship or something needs a theme. Maybe even a ship, needs the theme. And you see that and you think, oh, I need to write that theme. It's not necessarily something that we would share with the producer, if we're, you know, in a regular production schedule, maybe for a feature film, you might want to, you know, develop some themes up front for things, because you have a longer window of time to work on a feature film. That's, you know, I'm talking about a theatrical film. But in this case, I know that we identified in our first session, spotting the music with the producer, that there would be certain themes. But then also, as we were writing, certain things seemed like, oh, this is going to come back again. You know, this situation, it needs something that will ground it. I know that in my case, I came upon that cornfield scene, and it just seemed like there needs to be some musical material here that can express what this child is feeling as he's, you know, emerging from the cornfield and realizing he's home again. There needs to be something that we can call back to. And so I don't think we identified that up front, but it just felt organic, as you were just saying. It was a part of the story that we knew was going to be important and would come back. And so that happened in process. And it's funny too, because sometimes you can write something like that and you don't think of it as a theme, but then the producer's like, oh, that music that you wrote for that other scene, like, we need that here. And then suddenly it becomes a theme. And then you're like, okay, oh yeah, okay. And then you get the fact that there was that connection that maybe you didn't even know before, but you know, that's the story that's being told. So that's helpful too.
Zathras was like that too, actually. We didn't set out to have a Zathras theme, and yet he ended up with this very identifiable, you know, musical texture with some kind of unusual alien percussion sounds and that kind of thing. And it's like, oh, we have a Zathras theme now, even though we didn't, you know. But nobody listens to Chris, so.
Ding, 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 ding.
Nice.
You
Well
did the reference
played.
for the day, Chris. Very well done. Very well done. I had a question around that, and I forgot. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. This is always the dangerous thing to ask a composer. I recognize it, but are there any moments in here where you inwardly cringe and it's like, oh man, I wish I'd had a little more time to tweak this, or this is just a passage that there's nothing else I can do with it, and I just hope nobody notices, or any moments like that?
Well, sometimes, but on this project, no. On this project we really had I think we had kind of a luxurious schedule, if I'm not mistaken. And so, you know, you can't really allow yourself to go there. You have to push through, and just self-doubt sometimes. Even, I mean, if it's not working, the chances are it's not gonna, you know, you're not gonna just be able to go, oh, I'm cringing, and I'm gonna, you know, kind of sneak by with this one and just get it through to an air date or something. So usually somebody, you know, the producer or somebody will say, no, this is not working. But this one, we push. I mean, personally, I will push through if there's something that's not working. I mean, there's certain scenes, and I'm not going to specifically say which scene in this, because I honestly don't specifically remember, but there are times where maybe the pacing isn't something I fully understand of a particular scene. I don't feel the pacing a certain way, or I have an idea that I've developed, and all of a sudden something stops in the middle of this flow, and it's like, oh, I wish that we kept going. We wouldn't have to stop for these 2 seconds in the middle of this thing that has this section that has this momentum going. But that's our job, to figure out how to solve that puzzle, and I felt very supported. I felt very supported by the creative team on this one, and respected by them, which, I don't know, I think just as human beings, if you feel seen and you feel appreciated, it kind of unleashes another level of creativity, that it's hard to put that in words. I mean, and we also we don't have the same kind of contact. I mean, most of our contact was on Zoom and not in person. And so there is this element of not, when you're in person and you get to break bread with people and you get to watch somebody's pencil tap on the desk, or somebody, nervously look the other way. You don't get to have that same experience on Zoom. But in this case, it went really well. I know that was a very long answer.
So how long were you in front of the orchestra working with this, or is that something that you guys do together?
We had, was it a full day? Was it a double session that we had with?
No, we had
I
2
think it was
days.
2 days. Yeah, it was 2 days that we had with our live musicians. And we do this thing. The people that we work with know this because we've been scoring films for quite a long time. And so we usually end up working with musicians that have worked with us before. But we do this kind of round robin thing where we pass the baton. And so, one person will be on the podium for 2 hours, and another person will be for another 2 hours, and then we'll switch again. And so the musicians are kind of used to seeing the three of us kind of trade places. And then we do other duties. Some of us will be back in the booth listening. Some of us will be, watching other things or doing other things or dealing with parts or things like that. So I think we had 2 days with the musicians, and it was set up in a sort of a miniature version of what you described of, having a video monitor with the picture playing, and we're conducting, and the musicians are in front of us. And, we're pulling their performance into the story. We're pulling their performances into the picture and into the cue. And that's pretty much what it was. So I'm glad that translated.
I really, really want to see a video of you guys doing like a baton handoff, like in a track relay race, because that would just be.
I wish you were in Tenerife a couple of years ago. Was it last year?
It was
I guess
last year.
Last year, yeah, last year. We did a live concert in Tenerife at their film music festival in the Canary Islands, and we actually did one piece of music that had some transitions and things between it, but it was based on the Killing Joke and the music that we did from the Killing Joke. Lolita began with a suite of music that she had written for that, and then Chris was playing the piano for her, and then she handed off the baton to me, and I continued with some of Chris's music while he was still at the piano. And then we went into the I Go Loony song that we had written for that production together with Lolita and Chris both at the piano, but it all happened like all in the same piece on stage. And
with
it was like
orchestra, with a huge orchestra.
Yeah, with live orchestra and chorus. And it actually, like, Lolita would give a downbeat and then I would take the next upbeat, and then she scurried off to go play on the piano. So it was really quite something.
I want to see a video of that.
We do too.
We know it was recorded.
We have some iPhone footage, but we're waiting for the final edited.
That was great.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So do you get to be that active, switching between conducting and actually playing an instrument while you're like recording these?
No. Recording, it's just one at a time. We'll shepherd that one piece of music, and then we'll stop, and we'll have a moment to catch our breath. And yeah, there's always a very definite, we're switching now.
Yeah.
How much in English? How much rehearsal time do you all have with the orchestra? Is it all sight reading? Do you just show up with the sheet music and go, here we go, guys, press record, and that's it?
It is literally that. And that's why the musicians in Los Angeles are world renowned at their ability to just look at music without any rehearsal and just play it like they've been playing it all week. It's remarkable how good they are just looking at little notes on a page and making this incredible performance.
Wow.
That's insanely amazing. Absolutely. Have you ever been surprised with a performance, or in other words, like you've written a piece, you hear it in your head, you've done your demos and whatever else, but then when you get it in front of the orchestra, as you said before, there's something that you get from live musicians that you don't get from working with synthesizers in your DAW and all that. Have there ever been moments where you're conducting and all of a sudden there's just something comes up as these musicians are playing it that was a dimension that you never anticipated in that piece?
Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I think almost every time it's like it's really breathtaking when I mean, our samplers, our technical, what we can produce in our studios sounds pretty darn good. But just that every time when you have, when you lean a little bit to the right and your cellos just swell because they're feeling your energy, or when there's a certain soloist that just blows you away by the nuance of their performance. It is really breathtaking, and that's whether it's instrumentalists or vocalists. I mean, we've had some pretty incredible experiences on some of the material that we've written for some of the actors over the years to sing. Which also, I don't know, maybe the guys want to elaborate on a couple of those stories, but it's pretty exciting.
I know what I was thinking of was we did a movie that was kind of had a jazzy flavor to it, and we had a man named Wayne Bergeron, who is honestly, literally one of the best trumpet players in the world. And for the end credits of it, we just said, "Hey, play something cool," and it was this 45 seconds of just sheer fiery virtuosity that a clip of just him playing that ended up on YouTube and you can find it if you look for Wayne Bergeron. I can't remember it has some kind of silly tongue-in-cheek description, like the softer, gentler side of Wayne Bergeron. But I know that all of us, in addition to our minds being blown, our hair was actually pretty blown back as well. So.
Nice. So, is there anything new coming out soonish that you can talk about yet?
Well, we do have a soundtrack label that we launched about 3 years ago. We're releasing our material as fast as we can possibly get it mastered. And we have a soundtrack that's coming out in, I guess is it on Friday, Chris? No, next Friday. Next Friday. We can't tell you exactly what it is, but we can tell you definitely stay tuned. If you haven't started following us on Spotify, please do that, or iTunes or wherever else you look for music. And also on our website, there's a form where you can sign up and you can become one of our kind of insider people, and we'll be sure and let you know about these sorts of things. Chris, is there anything formal you want to say about that? I know that we've already released quite a bit of our material from other shows, and we certainly released the Babylon soundtrack. I believe we released that with the film, so it was out like the day that the film was released. So we were able to get that out right away, which is great. I have to tell you, it seems like a simple thing to release an album, but it is a very complicated thing legally and logistically, and to get everything happening in just the right way so that you can have a worldwide release of this music all at once. It's a feat, but we're getting good at it now that we've done it for a while, and we want to keep doing it. So the more people that tune in and listen, the more we can do.
And that's my question, because I saw the soundtrack come out and I said, oh, they're releasing it digitally first, because if I remember correctly, the movie was released only digitally at first, and it wasn't until later that the Blu-ray came out. So I'm sitting here waiting for the CD of the soundtrack to come out, and I'm like, where's the CD? I have this entire row of Babylon 5 soundtracks on CD. I would like to add this one. Where's the CD? And you're like, 10 months later, I'm like, where's the CD?
I knew I was going to touch a nerve there, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to activate that nerve.
No. I understand that the world is moving more and more digitally, but I am a physical media proponent.
Me too, by the way.
A lot.
I'm on that bandwagon too. I'm a collector.
Excellent.
I'm a person who collects soundtracks. I have over 1,000, and I just
wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking like really obscure classic stuff that's in mono that I just love. And I mean, I believe in ownership. I believe in physical media. I believe in owning what you love. And so I want you to know that we're not coming from a place where we're pushing digital on anybody as like the way of the future. What we found was in the complex web of legal music and the rights that we can obtain, and the staff that's available to give us their attention, what we were able to do and what we're now able to do for people is we are able to offer it digitally. We would love nothing more than to release physical media. We have not yet been able to make that happen because of the amount of people that need to review things like booklets and packaging, and there are physical things that have to be approved, and every single part of that component has to be approved, and that requires a lot of people and a lot of yeses.
Yeah.
And when we're doing our digital media, thankfully we have our key artwork, and then we are good to go, and it allows us to get that music out there. So we just made the decision that it's better to make it available however we can make it available, and if we are lucky enough to eventually be able to release physical media, we will do so.
Are there liner notes available, like in PDF or JPEG format, that you could also put out there?
Those would have to be approved. And so that requires that level of legal approval and artwork approval and font and like size and like everything. It's very complicated. We don't own the music. I must stress to you that we do not own this music, and so we are obtaining the ability from Warner Brothers to release this music in the way that we can release it. They're granting us that right, and we're very appreciable for that right. And
we have a lot of soundtracks that were in the past released by La La Land Records, many elaborate booklets and whatnot. But the market is, people, it is decreasing. It's interesting enough, of course, vinyl is outselling, for the young people. Vinyl seems to be the thing where they want to buy the vinyl and they sometimes don't even open it. They just keep it as a collector item.
The resurgence of cassette surprised me. I'm like, they're doing what?
Yeah. Thankfully, I still have my Walkman.
I was going to say, I have a very, very fond soft spot for cassettes. I don't know that I'd ever get back into it, but there was something about the mixtape that doing it with CDs just isn't the same thing, right? You get that tape and you got your record collection, you put the first song on, and then you just think about what's going to be the next song, and it just kind of the good mixtapes work out that way.
You make a mixtape, you stick in the cassette deck in the car, and you just drive.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So just to go around the group here, who would you say are the composers that have influenced you most?
I would definitely say Shirley Walker, just because I was spent so much time with her, observing her work, and she happens to be just such a phenomenal composer anyway. How could she not be an influence? But as far as film composers, I love Alexandre Desplat. I love Jerry Goldsmith. I love Thomas Newman. I love John Powell. There's so much great film music that's being made by people, and then going further back in terms of the golden age film composers, they were all influenced by Stravinsky and Strauss and Prokofiev and all that. It's all good stuff.
Stravinsky.
Stravinsky is Stravinsky. That and Nine Inch Nails.
There you go.
Okay, yeah.
There you go.
For me, Ennio Morricone. You put on Cinema Paradiso or The Mission, and I'm gone. That's it. See me in a week, I'll be out of my puddle of tears. Thomas Newman for sure. John Williams. John Williams, come on. I was wide-eyed and I had my 80s hairdo, and I was or maybe it was the 90s at that point, but I was working in the Warner Brothers Music Library when he was doing Witches of Eastwick, and I have a picture of myself and him, and then later in years we the three of us got a photo together at one of the Society of Composers and Lyricists events, and he's kind of the he's just so amazing. It's just he's a international treasure. So yeah, and then also Dave Grusin, who a lot of people don't necessarily think of so much as a film composer, but his music for On Golden Pond and quite a few, you know, wonderful comedies. He's a jazz orchestral composer, and just wonderful music. So that's for me.
Yeah, for me, I certainly probably starts with John Williams, since that's kind of the music that made me notice film music. But then after that, it certainly I've been influenced by Bernard Herrmann and Alex North and Jerry Goldsmith for sure, Michel Legrand, Henry Mancini. I mean, there's so many good film composers, and like Chris was saying, they were all influenced by the composers before them. I mean, Debussy and Stravinsky and Prokofiev and Shostakovich, and I mean, I don't know how any of those composers could have written what they wrote without having that rich musical history behind them.
Excellent. Nice. I I have a soft spot for John Williams and James Horner, and I think
Yes.
Stu Phillips was the very first one that caught my attention because of the original Battlestar Galactica soundtrack. I mean, that blew my mind as a kid, you know. I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And so yeah, I'm a music fan. I used to play guitar, but I still appreciate the soundtracks and what you guys have done here, you know, creating something fresh for a 30-year-old property.
And yet still
But
very much part of that property. I mean, we
Yeah.
talked about that at the start of this, right? Is that what you composed is fresh and new, and yet still sounds like it's
Yeah.
of that world,
Yeah,
right?
it still
really,
maintains
really impressive.
it still maintains the connection to the source. And I know that couldn't have been easy to do, but I'm here with Tim for the fans saying we think you did a great job on that. So thank you.
I only noticed that the only direct quote to Christopher Franke's music is at the beginning. That you quote the original B5 theme, but it's very brief, and then everything else is like we keep saying, it's new and fresh and original, and yet sounds like it's all. I went back, like I said, listening to the soundtrack. I'm trying to, okay, is this a motif from like the Fall of Night? Is this? But none of it is, right. It just has that same feel to it, but none of it is a direct quote of any of it, and just well done. Thank you very much for your hard work that keep us Babylon 5 fans so happy.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you for those beautiful words. Such the highest compliments.
Now, is the best place to find you guys the website, dynamicmusicpartners.com?
It is. Also, our social media, we're on Facebook at /Dynamic Music Partners and Instagram /Dynamic Music Partners. And all that is actually cross-posted onto Twitter /X as Dynmus Partners, DYNMUS Partners. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, website, those are the best places. And we always have our news there. As Mike said, from our website, you can sign up for our mailing list, and we don't... we only have occasional important updates for people that want the news first. So that's a good place to check out to keep in touch with what's next.
So that new music drop you were talking about will happen on Friday the 20th?
Friday the 20th, yes. And lucky Friday the 13th, this Friday, we'll actually be revealing what it is.
Excellent, excellent. We will have links where people can find you and follow you themselves and keep up with all of the other soundtracks that you do. I hadn't realized that you guys had done so many of the DC Comics animated films. I'm like, wait, these guys have done more than half of the movies I've watched. So.
Great. Yay.
Oh, well, Kristopher, Lolita, Michael, thank you so much for sharing your insights and, you know, describing your process for, well, helping keep Babylon 5 alive.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Let's do another one.
We will. We
Yes,
will.
please.
Another movie. Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you for your time.